Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG Public Media, TV, radio, online, news that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Anthony Moreno. On the program today, we explore the outdoors and talk with groups working to connect communities to our public lands. Joining us now is Patrick Nolan. He is Executive Director of Friends of the Organ Mountains Desert Peaks. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Anthony. Good to be here.
I'd like to start off talking about how your organization works to connect communities to the monument. Why is it so important for communities in our region to visit and learn about the National Monument?
I think what's really important is we need to really sort of dramatically change the relationship we have with our landscapes, right?
How is our relationship right now? How do you feel?
I think it's getting better. I think that what we really do is we focus on getting young kids outside, right? So through our Moving Montañas initiative, we run a number of after-school programs. We get kids out for, I think, adventures that I think would be out of reach for a lot of folks in this community. So that can be rock climbing, mountain climbing, overnight camping trips, which I think are really sort of this really kind of, it's a really immersive experience, and I think it changes a lot of things for participants, right? They gain a different appreciation of these places, right, and really sort of realize how special they are. And I think that's where it starts, right, is making sure we're offering opportunities for young kids to get outside.
Well, there's also some, you mentioned physical ways, field trips, things like that, getting outside.
Yep.
But what are the conversations like with the students you work with?
There's always one comment that always sticks out. He was a young kid that had just moved to the area, and at the time I believe we were at City of Rocks there in I don't know if that's in Grant or Luna County, but
just north of Deming.
Yeah, just north of Deming. And he's like, wow, you guys have so many amazing places here in southern New Mexico. And I think that really brought it home to me, right? Well, like we have folks coming here visiting, and I think there's a perception, right, about the Chihuahuan Desert when you come here, this sort of like a starkness or a bareness. But when you really get into there, you really begin to see how dynamic these places are and how special they are. And that comes with like getting those kids out and getting those hikes in and really seeing these places.
Well, it's a big year for the National Monument.
Yep.
It's going to be celebrating 10 years this year. Can you share with us some ideas or events your organization may have planned?
Yeah, absolutely. So in May, we're going to be hosting a big party. This is the official coming out party, I guess. We haven't announced this publicly. But we're going to have a big party at the convention center and really celebrate what 10 years of protected public lands and what this monument has meant to this community. We did this at the 5-year anniversary, so we'll do this again at the 10-year. And there'll be a lot of events sort of surrounding that, hikes and talks around the history and the specialness of these places. So we're really excited to sort of let the public know about what's happening during that month.
It's such a diverse area in this region. How do you reach diverse communities with your organization?
We do it through, a lot of our work is channeled through our public schools. We also have a number of partnerships with our after-school providers at the City of Las Cruces Parks and Recreation, Boys and Girls Clubs, other sort of after-school organizations. And we really built those relationships, and we built our programming based on conversations we have with those folks, right? Parks and Rec wants to do specific things with their kids and get their kiddos outside and learn about specific things, right? So we really try and match up what our partners are looking for to make sure that those experiences are as positive as they possibly can be.
What do you think are some of the biggest barriers, perhaps, or challenges facing communities that may want to explore the monument, but they may not be able to? What are some of those challenges?
I think some of it is just an unknown, right? So knowing where to go, knowing how to do it safely, how to do it responsibly. So a big piece of what we always really do is talk about leave no trace principles, staying on the trail, respecting plant life, wildlife, those things that we find out there. This is their home, right? And really how we're sharing these spaces with not only wildlife, but other people, folks out on bikes or horses. Really, how do we share these spaces for the betterment of our community? So we talk about that a lot. And I think it's really just providing opportunities, providing bus transportation, providing vans, providing that equipment, right? most folks cannot just go climb a mountain, right? You need to have the right gear. So making sure that we're providing those places and those things in a safe environment, I think, is really important.
You mentioned working with community partners like schools in the area. What sort of partnerships do you have as well with other organizations in the region?
We work with a number of different nonprofits, and sometimes that can be around policy issues, Land Water Conservation Fund, or it could be around the Outdoor Equity Fund that we are legislative session coming up, right? Making sure that that is fully funded. The Trails Plus program, making sure that, because this is investment in infrastructure that we really need to develop the outdoor rec economy. So making sure that Southern New Mexico is sort of listened to and heard. That really takes a lot of coalition meetings and coalition building to make sure that Southern New Mexico is a part of that conversation when we're talking about the outdoor recreation economy.
The Outdoor Equity Fund, can you talk with us a little bit about that and just why it's so important to the industry and organizations like yours?
Absolutely. So this started with when we established the New Mexico Office of Outdoor Recreation 4 or 5 years ago. And along with that came this Outdoor Equity Fund. And the Outdoor Equity Fund is really designed to get kids outside that wouldn't normally have those opportunities to do so, right? So there's a number of grantees here in Southern New Mexico, ourselves, FYI, Nuestra Tierra, I believe. A number of other organizations have gotten, there's the Southern New Mexico Mountain Bike Association have gotten grants from the Outdoor Equity Fund. And so we've really sort of created an environment here of organizations that are really dedicated to getting kids outside in safe and responsible ways. And really, there's a lot of partnership, there's a lot of collaboration. And that Outdoor Equity Fund has really created that environment to do so.
The outdoor industry has grown tremendously. There was a lot of reporting around the pandemic about just how many people are venturing outside. Of course, public land officials were voicing concerns they had with so many people coming out and resources available. But the industry has really grown. In New Mexico, it's 1.9% of the state GDP comes from outdoor recreation. That's according to Headwaters Economics. I'd like to hear from you. Just can you give us an understanding of how it impacts the local economy?
Yeah, absolutely. So last year we commissioned, the Green Chamber of Commerce commissioned a study to look at what the economic benefit of OMDP has, really to look at what's happening 10 years afterwards. So what we've learned is since that designation, we've seen a tripling of visitation to our national monument. Over 32 million of economic activity due to out-of-town visitors. So this is new money, brand new money coming in because they want to see the national monument. It also came with a larger investment from the Bureau of Land Management, who manages the monument. So a monument comes with staff. It comes with an archaeologist, a manager, paleontologist, outdoor recreation planner, right? It comes with these resources that really allow us to develop these places for outdoor rec. And then it's also increased tax revenue, job creation. About more than 300 jobs have been created because of the national monument. So really significant gains for a community our size, in particular because Southern New Mexico is in need of diversifying our economy. Having that outdoor recreation economy here, I think, is really important.
How is the National Monument doing in developing the resource management plan? Can you give us an update on that?
Yeah, so last year was the scoping period, right? And so this is when members of the community, organizations submitted comment. This was about the middle of last year. I think it wrapped up towards the end of the summer. And from that information, the BLM will gather that input and then so early this year, anytime really, they should release a number of draft plans, 3 or 4 draft plans. That'll spell out different ways about managing these resources within the monument boundaries. And then at that point, the public comments and offers feedback, and we settle on a plan that is going to manage this place for years to come. So it's really critical and really vital. In particular, I think it's really important around the outdoor recreation economy. And then there's other steps around that will happen after that around how trails are managed, roads are managed, right? So it's not the end of the process, but it's a really important step to developing this economy and really allowing it to grow even more.
How do you ensure that the communities in this region truly get their input heard?
I think we try to make that process, and there's a lot of rules and regulations that the BLM has to host a certain amount of public meetings, They have to respond to specific requests. So a lot of that is governed by just law. On our side, it's really making sure that folks are aware of those meetings, spreading the word, doing some education, right, around why does Plan A make sense, why does Plan B make sense, whatever it may be, right, and really having those community conversations. It's a community dialogue, right? It's making sure that the community feels some ownership of these places, right? These are our public lands, and this RMP is really a great opportunity to sort of exert our influence on that process.
The outdoor industry and officials working in the outdoors have faced criticism about not being diverse enough or maybe not reflecting what America truly is. Yes. How is your organization working to change that?
It's creating opportunities, right? Your average sort of viewpoint of somebody who's outdoors probably looks a lot like me, right? Except maybe put on a Patagonia vest, right? But that's not the reality. When we're out there on the trails, we see a community that reflects our community in a general sense. And so I think what we really want to do is raise up our outdoor rec users, really talk and engage with our mountain bikers, our hikers, because that is our community, right? Our community has I've seen a lot of monuments across the West, and all beautiful and unique in many different ways. I think OMDP is really unique in that we have such a strong connection to these places. And I think we celebrate that, and we raise that up, and we celebrate our diversity, and we celebrate how we sort of stand out in an industry that doesn't look like our community, and celebrate that.
Certainly been a lot of reporting about climate change, the drought, and how it's impacted New Mexico.
Yep.
How is that impacting the outdoor industry, the public lands in our region, and the mission of your organization?
Climate change is probably our greatest threat that we have as a world, right? And we also recognize the fact that protecting public lands from development or mining is one key part to reversing some of the impacts of climate change. And I think what we're really starting to see now too is a shift in our outdoor recreation leaders really recognizing that there has to be a balance between outdoor recreation and protection, and recognizing there is a middle ground there, right? There is a compromise that I think both protects these places, but then also creates space for folks to go out and have fun and experience these places. And that's sort of key, right? You got to see these places, you got to experience them. So it's not about locking off access, right? It's about sort of shifting our relationship that we have with these places, and also really fully understanding the impact that we have when out there. And I think for us, that really expresses itself in getting young kids out, right? These are going to be the future stewards. These are going to be the future protectors, the future advocates of these places. So let's start building those relationships now, and chart our way to sort of a brighter future around our relationship with public lands.
We just have a couple of minutes left with you, but I want to ask you, where is the outdoor industry in our region in 10 years? Where do you see it being?
Oh, that's a great question. I think in 10 years, we should have some more infrastructure. And I think a lot of that is like easier way to get to trails, more trail development potentially, more outdoor recreation development opportunities. And there's resources for this, right? That's the thing, is that especially now in particular, right, there's resources from the state of New Mexico, there's federal resources, there's private foundational resources to restore and sort of develop places for outdoor recreation opportunities. And I think what's important here in particular is that everybody goes to Dripping Springs, everybody goes to the Oregons, and they're beautiful, they're stunning, and I get that. But there's a lot of really unique and special places outside of the Oregons, and really making sure that we're sort of highlighting some of those opportunities too as well.
How do you ensure that our region gets the allocation of resources from the state, from the federal government, compared to other places in New Mexico? How's your organization working to do that?
That's organizing, right? It's organizing and advocacy, making sure that we are putting outdoor recreation voices in front of our state legislators, in front of our governor, A few months back, we held a meeting with Secretary Deb Haaland. She was here in southern New Mexico and really talking about the needs that we have in southern New Mexico, not just around outdoor recreation, but just around the protection of these places. And so it's making sure that those voices get to the places that they need to do to make the impacts.
Patrick Nolan is Executive Director of Friends of the Oregon Mountains Desert Peaks. Patrick, thank you so much for taking the time to talk
Thank
with
you,
us.
Anthony. Always a pleasure.
We'll be right back. Moving on, a group in New Mexico is working to bring together women who have a love for nature and the outdoors. Joining us now to share more about what this organization is working towards in New Mexico is Chris Gonzalez with Women Who Explore. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
It's great to have you on the program, and we would like to learn about your organization. Tell us about the mission.
Yeah, so I'm a part of an organization called Women Who Explore, and I'm a part of the chapter in New Mexico. We have over 160 chapters throughout North America, and so specifically myself, I focus on putting organizations for women. We just want to empower women to be comfortable with the outdoors.
What are some of the issues that women face when it comes to exploring the outdoors? Can you share a little bit more about that?
Some of the issues that I have seen women encounter is like not to do these by yourself, or you're women, you're expected to be at home. There's safety as well. We're viewed like you should be more at home and not spend time outdoors. I myself like to do group hikes. This is part of the Women Who Explore, but I also love to do a lot of solo hiking. So a lot of people tend to ask me, oh my gosh, you're out there by yourself? I get that asked a lot.
What was it that really made you interested in exploring the outdoors, and where did you find this passion for it?
Well, specifically the Oregon Mountains. I really love hiking out there. So hiking is really what took me to the outdoors. Once I started hiking, I also got into photography. So that's another one of my passions. So hiking plus photography kind of really took me out of my comfort zone to really get out there by myself. And it really stopped to enjoy the beauty of the Oregon Mountains. They're just so amazing to get on those trails and just sit there and look at every peak there. Super amazing.
So what sort of things have you been organizing here locally with your organization?
I have been hiking a lot of hiking events. That's kind of like what I focus on. So we do a lot of hiking events in the Oregon Mountains. Like we're talking about Dripping Springs, Fillmore Canyon, Soledad, then there's also like the Shelters Cave, there's the mine, and so I'm talking about the basic ones. There's Pine Tree Loop on the other side, but then I also like to organize a lot of camping, backpacking events in the Gila National Forest, the Lincoln National Forest, go all the way up to northern New Mexico, so that's the Santa Fe Forest, up into Taos. I like to go all over, whether it's camping, backpacking is such a beautiful experience.
When you organize these events, what sort of experience do the hikers and people who join you for these events have? Is it various levels of experience?
We do end up getting various levels, and this is why we like to do these events. A lot of these women don't have anywhere else to kind of get started. So this is the perfect place for women to learn, about the basics of gear. We start talking about all these in preparation before the event. So by the time the event comes, they already know what to have. And once we actually start hiking on the trail, like they know more or less what to expect. We women ourselves also teach each other, like, this is how you set up a tent in case they've never set up a tent. This is how you roll your sleeping pad, your sleeping bag. This is how you warm up your water on a jet boil. This is how you make your food. Like a lot of these things, we help out each other. So it's open to any women.
It sounds like a lot of the work that you're doing is a lot to do with empowerment. Is that right?
That is correct. Empowerment of that we can do this, we will do this, and we can teach other women that it's okay to try something new that is completely new to you. And by the time you end up doing these different events, you just feel so empowered. And the goal is to get women to come back out there. And I always say, I would love to see and hear that you come out and do these events, or not these events, but these hikes out on your own, which is a very rewarding feeling when you hear that a woman went out there by themselves to go explore the trail again.
What are some of the fears some folks may have venturing outdoors by themselves, perhaps?
I think, again, like the biggest one is that safety key, like, will somebody be out there wanting to hurt me? There's also the aspect of animals, but we also teach about how you can keep safe. Like here in the Oregon Mountains, animals is not so much of a risk, but the higher you go up into higher elevation, you know, there's bears, so that can be a little bit more concerning, but we teach them, you know, there's bear spray, or there's like a certain way of how you can make louder noise to let an animal know, like, hey, I'm coming up. So usually animals don't want to hurt you. The moment they hear that something is not an animal, you know, they're gonna want to go away, and so they won't bother you. So we teach women like how to keep an eye out for like animal safety, human safety. So bear spray is also good to deter people. I mean, those are things you do need to think about, especially if you do solo hikes.
Yeah, bears being in the higher elevations in the Gila or perhaps near Ruidoso in those areas. Other safety things to think about if you do choose to venture out and go hiking.
Some of the things we like to also teach is like staying on trail, and that's for a reason, especially if you're just getting started. Staying on trail, making sure that you don't go off trail, because if you do get injured, that's another thing. Injury can also be a risk. So if you are injured and if you're off trail, who's gonna see you? Possibly no one, and it could be hours until they finally hear you. We also like to point out weather. Weather is a huge factor here. I mean, we might get some rainstorms here, so not much of a concern, but somewhere else in northern New Mexico or outside of New Mexico, weather can play a huge factor, how people get injured. Another big thing we like to talk about is making sure you have cell phone service, especially if you're just getting started. Or you can also have like a satellite device with you, which can keep sending coordinates to your loved ones of where you're at, and then it'll have an SOS button on there should anything happen. At least you have that security sense of that you're gonna be okay should anything happen, but you definitely don't want anything to happen.
Well, there's a lot of wide open spaces out here in our public lands, so always probably a good idea to let people know where you're going and when you plan on being back.
Correct. You want to let them know, hey, I'm going to go on this day, this time. If you don't hear from me X amount of time, text me. If not, you know, definitely something's not right, and they know to take the proper precautions and steps to make sure you're safe.
What are some of the things you've noticed about the outdoor industry? There's been a lot of criticism of it not being diverse enough. Perhaps those working in conservation as well have faced that criticism. What are your thoughts on that?
What I have seen, because of where I come from, like as a woman, like I'm starting to see more people include women, reach out to women, as the organization is like specifically for women. So that's something that we definitely, you know, get impacted by. But we see that companies or organizations out there are willing to reach out to women. They want to learn from us, you know, like come out here and do a presentation or be a part of this event. I also see like gear, for example. Sometimes when I first started backpacking, the backpack I used was too big for me. So just knowing that there's backpacks that can even fit more of my body is really nice, because if not, it's too uncomfortable, and who wants to do something that's uncomfortable? So just knowing that even in gear, things are more accessible to women as well, that's also something it's gonna encourage you to get back out there.
You obviously have some extensive experience hiking and being outdoors. How has that experience affected other parts of your life?
It's really impacted me in a way that, kind of like earlier we spoke about empowerment. I really feel like hiking like in the Oregon Mountains to me just gives me a sense of purpose. It empowers me. Once you kind of get up to a high point and you get to view the landscape, it's such an empowering feeling. So I kind of apply that to my personal life, whether it's in personal problems, for example. It can be even work if you're too stressed, whatever it may be. Believe me, once you're out there on the trails, you get a good disconnect, a good distraction. Like if you want to be distracted, this is the most healthy distraction you can get. And it's a physical exercise too. So it keeps you active. and healthy.
What are some of the things people have shared with you on these outings about our national monument and public lands?
Well, for example, for the Oregon Mountains, that they just can't believe how beautiful it is, that also the fact that it's so open to anybody. I mean, there's like some really hard trails, and then there's some really easy, accessible trails. And just to know that there's a variety like that does encourage women and even men to get out there and explore the trails, because I also like to encourage men to get out there, even though I'm here for women who explore, but definitely like it's open to anybody, families too.
Where would you like to see your organization go in the future?
I think just continue to get more women together, like letting women know that we can do this together, we can go explore these things together. And then the goal is that those women tell other women, and those women tell other women, and we just have more women outdoors, getting them to love what is out there.
So is there anything you're really excited for this year?
For this year, I think I'm just looking forward to doing a lot more backpacking trips with women. I do have planned to do a few backpacking trips in the Oregon mountains, the Gila forest, go up to northern New Mexico as well, and they're all to the public lands too. So this gives us the perfect opportunity to educate the women about the public land that we have access to.
Chris Gonzalez is an ambassador for Women Who Explore with the New Mexico chapter. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And we want to thank you for joining us. That's our time for now. Join us this week on KRWG Radio. Every weekday, it's Morning Edition 5 to 9, Fresh Air at 11, followed by Here and Now from noon to 2, and All Things Considered 4 to 7. KRWG News is always online at krwg.org, and we'd like to hear from you. You can email us with story ideas to feedback@nmsu.edu. For all of us at KRWG News, I'm Anthony Moreno. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.